When you think of rhythm games, do you ever think that it's similar to playing a real instrument? No? Well, me neither. But I think that at least some of you who have tried a rhythm game have thought this while playing. This is boring as hell. This needs action. This is too easy. Well, let me introduce you to Crypt of the Necrodancer. A charming, simple, difficult, soul-crushing and unforgiving game. Do I still have your attention? Good. Today I want to talk about Crypt of the Necrodancer and why it's one of the most difficult games you can pick up and play. I do have to warn all of you that I haven't personally experienced everything in the game, so if I miss something very important in this video, then please leave a comment about it down below. This video will also, as usual, contain a few spoilers for Crypt of the Necrodancer, so if you are worried about that, then just play the game before you watch this video. I will at the start quickly go over the main gameplay of this game, so if you already know it or just don't want to listen to it, then skip to the timestamp on the screen. But without further ado, let's explore the difficult and unpredictable world that is Crypt of the Necrodancer. In the main story, you play as Cadence, who wanders down into the crypt in search of her father after he went down there in order to look for something called the Golden Loot. The game consists of 4 different zones, where each zone has 3 layers and a boss fight at the end. The crypt is filled with monsters who, just like you, move and act to the beat of the music playing in the background. You have the ability to buy items from the shop by using coins that you get from defeating enemies or using specific items. You have a set amount of health that you can recover by eating food you have found in the crypt. There are also hub characters that you can save if you want to unlock more items in the game by using diamonds. Now, all of this seems simple and easy, right? Well, there is first of all a beat that you have to act and move in conjunction with. There is permadeath. If you don't move, then the enemies just move. There is at no point any breathing room or invincibility frames. Food is also pretty rare to come across. As you can hear, there is quite a lot, so I think I will start talking about the most important mechanic in this game, being the beat. Now, the beat in each layer is interesting because it's always changing. Depending on which character you use, the beat either changes or stays the same with a minor alteration to fit the character you are playing as. But a common thing with the beat is that you have to do everything to it. You have to move to the beat, place items to the beat, attack to it and other things. Now, with the environment also being very small and packed, it's very easy for you to be swarmed or even cornered by enemies, leading to some pretty stressful situations. So it's obvious that when a bunch of enemies backs you into a corner, you want to move out of the way or at least get rid of them. Well, you can't just begin spamming every key on your keyboard in hopes of getting out of there, because you have to get out of this stressful hell by listening to the beat. All of this basically means if you cannot hear or move to the beat, then you are basically screwed playing as nearly any of the characters in the game. This is, in my opinion, also the most difficult gameplay element to get used to when playing this game for the first time. I am by no means inexperienced when it comes to dungeon crawlers, roguelikes, or just difficult games in general. But when I have to play and make all of these rapid, fast and precise moves to a beat, I sometimes end up getting a bit overwhelmed, leading to some not so thought out moments. Now, do I think that it's difficult to move to the beat? Not really, actually. It does take some time to get used to, but once you have the beat memorized, it's only a problem of keeping your streak that you have to worry about. I think it's about time we moved on, because I will otherwise end up talking about the beat for the rest of the video. So let's now talk about the enemies and bosses in Crypt of the Necrodancer, because there are a lot of enemies in this game. Just like I said at the beginning of this video, there are 4 zones in this game, all with their own set of enemies. Some of the enemies you meet in later zones are just reskins or stronger versions of enemies that you met on an earlier zone. But there are also unique ones that are only present in a specific zone. To quickly go over the difficulty of the enemies in a chronological order based on their respective zones, it shouldn't be a surprise that the first zone also has the easiest set of enemies. On this zone you go up against enemies such as skeletons, slimes, green dragons, monkeys, bulls and other enemies. They are overall simple and predictable enemies that are easy to learn the patterns of. The beat of the first layer is also pretty slow, so you shouldn't have too much trouble getting through it. To quickly talk about the bosses you can meet in this zone, it's actually not the same boss every time as it is for other games in the genre. Because there is a total of 4 main bosses that you can go up against. And it's the same for bosses there are in the 3 other zones. The only difference there is between a boss fight in the first zone and a boss fight in the 3rd zone is the difficulty. It makes sense that the further you go down in zones, the more difficult the bosses also become. A common addition to any boss fight or some of the final zones are such as increased health for the boss and the enemies in the area, more enemies in general and harder enemies. When you see it for the first time, it might seem like small details that shouldn't change the overall difficulty of the fight, but believe me, it does. A question that I think some of you might be asking me at this time is, do I think that the beat or enemies are unfair? To that I can only say one thing. Everything that happens in the game is your fault when it comes to slip-ups and seemingly unfair moments. Now, is this just my opinion? Absolutely. If you think that whatever happens in the game is the game's fault, then fine, live with that opinion. But if you ask me, then there are no unfair moments in this game unless you create them yourself. I now think it's about time to cover a very minor but quite impactful thing in Crypt of the Necrodancer, being the traps. Because even though they are small distractions that can very easily be avoided, I still somehow end up speeding the beat up or down, getting damaged or having my controls reversed. A small thing like a bounce trap can be enough to put you in a very cramped or even impossible situation. But just like I said before, it only happens if you fall into the trap yourself. I could go over all of the specific traps in this game, but I think that it's better to talk about something a bit more interesting in most people's eyes, which are the different characters you can play as in the game. Because there are a lot of characters, way too many for me to cover in this video. So I will just talk about the most common ones, with the first one being the official main character, Cadence. Now, each character you play as has a certain build consisting of a weapon, a specific amount of health and a certain item. Now, some characters also have a specific criteria that you have to play by if you want to, play as them. To give a few examples, there is a character called Dove who cannot kill any enemies, meaning that all of the exits are open and that the items in the shop are free. Another character is the one called Monk, who upon collecting any amount of gold will instantly die, ending the run. Those are just 3 of the 11 characters without DLC that you have access to, which also allows for a lot of replays. You unlock all of these characters by completing a certain amount of zones with a specific character. Like if you complete all 4 zones using Cadence, you unlock a character called Melody and Dorian. All of this means that there are no excuses to be made if you ever think that there's nothing else to do in this game, because there always is. To dive a bit deeper into why this game is so difficult, I want to shift your attention over to the next topic, which is Based on the title of this topic, I think that it shouldn't be a surprise to you when I say that no two runs in this game are the same. Because of procedural generation, there is always a new layout that you have to get used to, meaning that it's impossible for you to beat a run by memorizing the crypt, the traps and the enemies on a specific attempt. I mean, you can of course always input a set seed and play that layout, but I'm pretty sure that you can't complete anything on a set seed. This also means that you can get extremely lucky on an attempt and beat it on your first try, but when you play another run in the same zone, it might be complete chaos with tons of enemies, traps, bad items and difficult moments. I personally think that using procedural generation is a great way to make every single attempt feel unique and challenging for that matter. Because I think that Crypt of the Necrodancer would not be the difficult game it is today if it didn't have procedural generation coded into its layout. Another interesting thing to talk about is that you can only learn to play Crypt of the Necrodancer by repeatedly failing over and over again. You died to that one annoying red dragon, well, too bad, you have to start that zone over again. You are having a difficult time getting used to the beat on a certain layer? Well, just keep on playing because there is no training mode in this game, aside from the enemy and boss training. This is of course a concept that not everyone is interested in or has the time to learn. I mean, there is a quick tutorial at the start of the game, but that only teaches you the very basics of the game, so if you aren't prepared or cannot handle losing over and over again, then this game might not be for you. Or just watch someone play it. I mean, I'm not here to stop you from experiencing this game. Now, even though there are punishing mechanics in this game, such as permadeath and precise controls that you have to get used to, there are also a few things that make the game much easier. With you first of all having the ability to buy permanent upgrades and items that will spawn randomly in the crypt. If you did not have access to all of the items and weapons in this game, I think that beating all of the zones with just the starting character would be way more difficult and much more of a grind. There are of course not infinite permanent upgrades for you to buy, since it would otherwise make the game easy, which must of course be avoided by all means. With all of this said, there are also risky items that you have access to. There is in the game a full set of glass items that consists of weapons, armor and items. Now these items are very powerful, but there is a huge downside to using them, since most of the glass items break after one hit from any enemy, rendering them completely useless. And there are similar high risk, high reward items in the game, such as the Karate G, which lets you do double damage at the cost of taking double damage from any enemy. There are also the Boots of Pain, which allows you to do more damage when moving close to an enemy or crate, but you take 1.5 hearts of damage each time you equip the boots. It's items such as these that you don't really want to use or have to use, but need to buy in order to buy other better items. Now you can always remove items from spawning in a run, but you have to find and free the right NPC to do that, which depends on your luck rather than your skill. Having said that, we now need to move on to a different topic, which is a short but interesting one, being controller versus keyboard and which of the two I think is the most difficult one to use. Now I have tested both things and have come to a conclusion. A split conclusion you could call it. Because I think that moving using a keyboard is better than using a controller. But I think that using items is better on a controller than on a keyboard. And just to clarify, I am making this opinion based on the default controls for both keyboard and controller. Now with the controller you have two ways to move. You can either use the joystick or the D-pad. I for one think that it's much easier to move in conjunction to the beat using the D-pad, since you can only move in 4 directions, but that's just me. So you do you, I guess. With that said, I still think it's easier to move using the keys on a keyboard, because my hand and fingers can just rest on the keys and I just have to press down, instead of moving my fingers up and down in order to move using the D-pad. But when it comes to using items, I think that playing with a controller is the superior move, since there is just one button that you have to press instead of a combination of keys on a keyboard. Now, is all of this kind of pointless since you can just change the controls in the settings menu? Yes and kind of no, because how many of you will actually spend time finding the perfect set of keybinds in a game where you can use a maximum of 4 keys? Is it a bit more on a controller? Yes, but it's also more limited than a keyboard. So if you want my honest opinion on what's more difficult to use, then it's the controller. So much of the game is spent learning the beat and perfectly moving to it, which is in my opinion easier on a keyboard. We have now arrived at the last topic of this video, which once again is a bit of a short but certainly important one. Flow state. I don't think that this phrase is unknown to many of you, but to quickly cover what a flow state is, it's a trance-like focus that enables one to focus very deeply on a specific thing that they are doing. Once you are in a flow state, it's the equivalent to shutting unimportant things out in order to focus on what you are doing. Now, is entering a flow state needed in order to complete Crypt of the Necrodancer? In my opinion, no, it isn't. But just like with a lot of games in the Souls genre, you are required to make rapid, fast and precise decisions. A thing that is easier to do while you are in a flow state. A lot of you have probably noticed that it's way more difficult to focus on something if you're having a conversation with someone while you are doing that thing. Sure, some people are very good at multitasking, but if you're just trying to have a conversation with someone while playing Crypt of the Necrodancer, then good luck to you. And with that said, thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. Remember to leave a like and a sub if you enjoyed the video. And until we meet again, bye bye!